Okay, so today we're going to start on Tes Zayin Amud Beis, that's 16b. And we ended right before the new Gemara. We ended by Itmar Nami, which is the new Gemara is Rabba Bar Chana. We ended like 2 lines before that.
Oh, right.
And it's about 9 lines from the bottom. You have that?
That's Zion Bays.
Tes Zayin Amud Beis.
Okay.
Itmar Nami, 9 lines from the bottom. Okay, we thank Hashem. We're able to learn Torah every day. And in this of our learning, we should have the Beis Hamikdash. So we're learning that there's a machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan regarding if two people attest to the writing of the get, and one person says that he was there at the signing of the get. The Rabbanan said that that's pasul, and Rabbi Yehuda says that that's kosher. We had a discussion if Rabbi Yehuda would say that it's kosher even if one person said that he was there at the writing and one person said that he was there at the signing, if that would be good enough. Now, this was a machlokes if Rabbi Yehuda would argue in that case as well. And we said at the end, according to the Lishna Basra, that yes, Rabbi Yehuda would argue. And now the Gemara says it's Marnami. It's also stated, I'm Rabbi Yehuda. Now we even have a clear statement from the Amiraim that if 2 people bring the get, that automatically that's going to be a machlekes Rabbi Yehuda Rabbanan. Now the explanation for this, what we're discussing is, do we say?
But that's okay if there's 2 witnesses that didn't witness the writing and the signing together.
Because there's 2 together. If we learn like Rava, that the whole reason why you have to say in front of me, it was written in front of me, it was signed, was to validate the document right now because we'll never find witnesses. Well, right here we do have 2 witnesses coming from Chutz La'aretz, Eretz Yisrael. We have the 2 witnesses right here, and if they want to validate the signatures, we have them. They'll validate the signatures. One of them, they're not validating it right now, but that's good enough because they're here. And they're 2 messengers. You don't have to. We don't need them to do this, to validate. And what we're saying is, according to Rabbi Yehuda, and what we're saying is, what about Lishma? What about the problem of Lishma? Regarding Lishma, Rabbi Yehuda holds that since it's Lachar Shalamdu, they learned already that it's supposed to be, the people were already knowledgeable. And so therefore we don't make a decree when there's 2 witnesses. And the Rabbanan say no, that we make a decree. Okay.
Is there one that's more important, the writing or the signing of the get? Is there one of those elements that are more important than the other?
It would depend on, that was going back to machlokes Reb Meir and Reb Elazar. If you hold that the writing of the get is more important than the signing of the get is more important. That was a machlokes. Okay, so now it starts like this. Yeah. The witnesses on the get. I think we actually hold the main thing is, I don't remember, but it's machlokes. I think we hold the main witnesses are the ones that watch the delivery of the get. That was the view of Reb Elazar. The view of Reb Meir. They would have to go back to see how we passed him. I'm not sure who the halach was like. Doesn't tell me here who the halach was like.
Well, is it a valid get without witnesses on it?
Question is if it's valid midaraisa.
Naftali, I was going to have the same question.
Well, I was going to say is that usually witnesses on a document are important only if there's a later dispute as to whether it's valid. It's not like a ksuba where the witnesses make the document valid.
No, well, a ksuba is valid because of the ksuba is very different. The ksuba is just proving to a kinyan that took place. to his agreement. It's just a proof. The get is
So it's the kasuva that's like other documents, and it's the get that's different then,
yeah,
if there's a question.
right.
So the question would be, okay,
So it seems so from this, at least from the note back on Daf Dalet, that we do paskin like Rabbi Lazar, that the main witnesses are the ones that witness the delivery of the get. That's what it appears, but I would have to check. Okay, now we have a Gemara, Rabbi Bar Bechana Cholash. Rabbi Bar Bechana was ill. All Legabe Rav Yehuda v'Rabba l'Shiuli Bey. Enters into him Rav Yehuda and Rabbah. Yes, Rabbi Bar Bechana was in Bavel. He traveled. Rabbi Bar Bechana traveled. He has a lot of stories about his travels. We'll get to that in Baba Basra. But he learned by Rabbi Bar Chana learned by Rebbe together with Rav. This is Rabbi Bar Chana. Anyway, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbah go in to visit him. There's other versions to this Gemara who it was. But Boamine, they asked from Rabbi Bar Chana, are we required, if two people bring a get, are we required to say, do we require them to say in front of me, it was written in front of me and signed or not? That's basically the machlekes that we just had. Amalei ain't tzrichim said it's not necessary. Two people bring the get. Sounds like Rabbi Yehuda's view, right? What if they would say that the woman was divorced? Two witnesses attesting she's divorced is good. Even without a get, they would just say that she's divorced. Now they're bringing a get and they're saying that this is basically they're bringing it and saying that it's good.
You need to have a get, don't you?
You need to have a get. We're talking about if they would have said without, we don't know anything, they would have sort of showed up and said, we attest that she's divorced. You would have believed two witnesses. Now you have two witnesses that are bringing the get. Why are you creating problems? In other words, it's sort of like a migu. You have to believe them that the get's good, even though it's not exactly the way the sages instituted it, that that someone has to say, but you have to believe them because they could have said something else. That's the way that it's being explained. Adahachi, while they were discussing this, Asu Chavara, this fellow that's a Persian, I think they were fire worshippers. And what do they say over there?
Jewish name for Zoroastrian.
Oh, really?
priest.
Zoroastrian priest.
Zoroastrian, yeah. Partial description, charmers. Reflecting a common perception that these priests were involved in
Magical rituals. They say in this that it's associated with the chaver, that not to do that type of magic. It says it prohibits kaisim, ksamim, and even yadaini and chaver. Okay, anyway, this was this type of priest, and they didn't allow anyone else to have fire in their houses during their holidays. All fires had to be out except in their churches. So Shakle Lashragim Mikamai, he took the candle away. I guess they couldn't study anymore. Amar, so Rabbi Bar Bechana says, Rahmana Eibishter, it's merciful one. I'd either want to be in your shade, or I want to be in the shade of the Romans, the children of Esav. I don't want to be in the shade of the Persians. Is he saying shade because of the darkness that just came? Maybe. The Memra, does this mean to say the Aramai Malami Parsai? Does he mean Aramai or does he mean Roman? How do they translate Aramai? Does it Aramean or Roman?
This is to say that the Romans are.
Yeah, so the aleph of Aramai is a prefix. That regarding the Romans, I guess, like means like on or regarding, that's better than the Persians. Does he mean to say that Romans are better than Persians? The Roman exile is better than the Persian exile? That's but 1 second. But Reb Chia told us, what's the meaning of the pasuk that says Elikim Haven Dark, that God knows the way? It's referring to the Torah. Who Yadas Mekayim, he knows where it will be settled, which means that when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, they went to Bavel to study Torah. That must mean that they're calling Aramean is, at least they're translating as Romans, but the literal reading is Arameans. Aram, like Aramaic. And he exiled us to Babel because we wouldn't be able to handle the Romans. So who's worse? The Romans must be worse, according to this. Well, Umar says like Kasha. It's before, it depends, before the Zoroastrians or after the Zoroastrians. When the Zoroastrians came at a certain time, after, and they weren't always in Babel. Or maybe it was a new philosophy. I don't know when he lived. When was Zoroaster? When did anyone know when he lived? Dr. Stein will have to search for us. When did he live? But they, I thought it went back a long time. I thought that it's very old. But some people wanted to say that Yetzer Or Varicheshach was that pasuk. What does it say? Yetzer Or Varicheshach is Shalom Ra. I think the pasuk says. We say in the davening Warriors, but I think that was refuting the Zoroastrians. The Zoroastrians said that there's a God of light, there's a God of darkness, there's a God of good, a God of bad. Yeah. So the Greeks had a lot of gods, and the more they had in India, they same thing. The more the merrier. So, but they think that one of them was the car, Mazda was one of their gods. I don't know if that was a good one or bad one.
Like car, yeah.
The car, the name that car is the name of that. Anyway. So apparently when the Zoroastrians came, that's when it went bad. Originally, when the Persians were there, they probably have interesting comments in the Quran. I didn't see what it says. Does he add anything that's worthwhile?
Life was good under the Persians, but not the Romans.
Life was good. Life was good under the Persians, but not the Romans. And then it went bad when the Zoroastrians came. It probably went worse, after the Zoroastrians were the Muslims.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, well, this Sassanid was
Sassanid dynasty came to power in around 226 CE. What's CE mean?
it means Common Era.
Oh, that's the modern era.
That's the Jewish way of saying AD.
They brought with them the Zoroastrian religion and its priests called Habarim,
Yeah.
who wielded significant power. They made a point of interfering in the lives of the residents, including Jews. They occasionally inflicted severe decrees on those faithful to the Jewish people, to the Jewish religion.
Okay, so the Sassanid brought in the Zoroastrians.
Thanks.
You see under the Zoroastrians, the Jewish people owned land. We were able to own land, and that's what gave us time to be able to study Torah. That's why because you have in between planting and harvesting, you have a few months that you can just wait. So during those months they would go and study Torah. So that's why the yeshivas were there.
Empire before.
Right. And then when the Muslims came in, then we weren't able to study Torah because the Muslims didn't allow the Jews to own land. So you couldn't own land, you have to become a merchant of some sort. Then you have to work every day. When do you learn? You learn in the morning, you learn at night. You don't have like weeks, months to be able to sit. Okay. One of them said, one of the witnesses here says that in front of me it was written. Okay. Two of them say in front of me it was signed. They say that that's kosher. That's kosher. Now,
Because before it was that one person saw the signing, now one person saw the signature.
right.
In which case it's
Right. What's going on now is that you have two people attesting to the signatures, so they're really validating the document. Although he's not saying correctly, b'fanei nichtav, he's not saying that I was there at the writing of it, which is what he's supposed to say. But nevertheless, there's two people at the signatures. That's perfect. Okay, Amar Rab Ami, Amar Rab Yechanan. Rab Ami says, name of Rab Yechanan. Leishanu. This is only. When do we say that this is acceptable? Shaget Yetim Mitachas Yad Eid Ksiva. That who is the actual messenger here? The messenger is the one that's attesting to that he was there at the writing of the get. So we have a rule that the messenger is believed to say that he was there at the writing, he was there at the signing. When we say he's believed, we mean that he's like two witnesses. So now what comes out is we have two witnesses that were there at the writing. It's not really two, it's only one, but figuratively it's two. And he represents two because the sages instituted that the messenger can say that he was there at the writing, we believe him. Then we have two actual witnesses at the signing. Because that comes out that we actually have witnesses, two witnesses for both. It's really only one for the writing, but he's counted like two because the sages instituted that the messenger. See, what's the vagueness of this case is who was appointed to be the messenger. We have two witnesses that tell us they were there at the signing, but they were not the messengers. They just said, "Oh yeah, we were on the same plane. The get was done in the airport. You should have seen that fight." No. We were there at the signing of it, but who was the messenger himself? He was the guy that's claiming that he was there at the writing, and that's why it's going to be good because we have two witnesses for both. But if the messenger were the people that were there at the signing of it, then we don't have anyone attesting to the writing of it. We do have one, but he's nothing. So Alma Kasavar, it's gonna. If that's the case, it's gonna be possible. Alma, we see that Rabbi Yochanan holds Rabbi Ami in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that says Kasavar Shnaim Sheviu get Medina Siam Tzrichim Shem B'Fneinu Nechta. Even though we have two witnesses that were there at the get is a valid get because we have witnesses that are testing that the signatures are good. More than the signatures are good. They were there when it was being signed. Not that we recognize the signature. Nevertheless, why would it be invalid? Because we don't have the proper statement of the fanei nechtav. We don't have the proper statement. In front of me it was written, in front of me it was signed. We don't have witnesses that are attesting to the writing of it. It must mean that we're concerned about lishma, not about validating the get. That's what it comes out. And you need to say fanei nechtav, even when you have two witnesses that are bringing the get. Amalei Ravasi tells to Rabami and Rabasi are friends. Elamayata, if that's the case, Reisha Diktani, if you go back earlier to an early case in the Mishnah, it says, two people say that we were there at the writing, and one person says that I was there at the signing. So that's a machlekes between the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda. The Rabbanan say Pasal, Rabbi Yehuda says Kasha. That was yesterday's Gemara. But what would come out is that the two people that are saying that they were there at the writing, they could have been the ones that were the messengers. Second. And it says, means that even if the shneim of the witnesses that were there at the writing, or does it mean the witnesses, both the witnesses of the writing and both the witnesses of the signing? Let me see how he translates the mitachas shneim. The reason it is valid is that the bill of divorce is not produced by both of them, from which it may be inferred that if the bill of divorce is produced by both of them, the sages would deem it valid. One says it was written in my presence, and two say it was signed in my presence. This bill of divorce is valid. The document is certainly valid if it is produced by two signatory witnesses in accordance with the last version. Okay, that's going to be later. That's not what we're saying now. Let me do this again. Amalei Ravasi. Ravasi says, Elamayata, if that's the case, that the two witnesses, that even if two witnesses are bringing the get, you still have to say, then when it says in the Reisha Shnaim, two people say that in front of me it was written, and one of them says, in front of me it was signed. There's only one on the signature, two on the writing. Puzzle. The rabbi say it's puzzle. Rabbi Yehuda Machsher, Rabbi Yehuda says that it's going to be kosher. He says, "Vafilu get yotzei bitachas shidei shneim pas rabbanon." It's going to come out that even if they're both witnesses, they're not both witnesses. Even if they're both messengers, the rabbanon would still say it's puzzle because you don't have a valid b'fanei nechtam, because you have the person that's bringing the get is not saying that it was in front of me, it was written. So what? I have two witnesses to that. The Rabami says yes. What does yes mean? That it's going to be puzzle. Even though, does it explain it better over there? Does it explain over there that it's talking about? But I'm just curious about the shneim. Is the shneim mean the two witnesses of the writing, or is the shneim both the witnesses of the writing and the witnesses of the signing? Okay. Now, how do they translate the comment of Ravasi? Ravasi says, if that's the case, in the first case, that when he says two on the writing and one on the signing, Rabbi say it's puzzle, and Rabbi says it's kosher. Okay.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Yeah, I got that. That I understand. That's his introduction to his question. Okay. Let's read the next one, and hopefully it'll clarify it for us. Zimnin Ashkeched Yosef Kamar. There was a later time when this is Rab Asi sees Rab Ami that was saying something in the name of Rabbi Yechon Kamar. That we're going back to the first case now. The first case was two people said that it was signed in their presence, and one person said that it was written in the presence. Comes along Rabami and says that even if the messengers were the Eidei Chasima were the two, it's still going to be kosher, even though there's no one here that's really attesting. We don't have anyone valid that's attesting to the writing, and it's still going to be kosher. Alma, okay, this is a different story. Because get me Medina Sayam, that's an abbreviation over there. You don't need to say it. In front of me, it was written, in front of me, it was signed. Because over here, you only have, in front of me, it was signed. If that's the case, two people say in front of me, it was written, one says in front of me, it was signed, puzzle. The rabbi says it's puzzle, Rabbi the Machsher. And Rabbi says it's kosher. Taima, the reason why the Rabbanan say it's puzzle is because I don't have the one that's bringing the get is not the messenger. The one that's the messenger is not the one that's saying that he signed, that it was signed in his presence, because you don't really need to say in front of me it was written as long as you validate the signatures. But But if the one that was bringing the get would actually say in front of me it was signed, that would be enough. Amalayin said, you're right. It would be valid.
Ami's saying to him,
Rabami saying that it would be valid.
to who?
To Rabasi. Rabasi is the one that's commenting that basically what switched in this Gemara was if the get is definitely valid because I have two witnesses here to validate signatures, or even if I don't have two witnesses, but I believe the person has two witnesses because that it's valid. So then I don't have to be concerned about it being lishma, that I should have to say b'fanei nechtam, because the signatures are for sure valid. So what switched is in the beginning he said, no, you do have to be concerned about the lishma. You still have to make the statement b'fanei nechtam. The second case, second version of this of Rav Ami, you don't have to be concerned. So he comments and he says, but last time you didn't say that. Last time you said exactly the opposite. He says, this is a peg that cannot be moved, which means that my later version is correct. I think that comment means that you try to put something in the wall and it doesn't always stay. You find it like you bang it in here, you bang it in there. He says, now I got it in. I figured out the shot, and this is how it's supposed to be.
Right.
That you don't need to say b'fanei nechtam if the messengers, if you have two messengers here to the get, and which would validate the signatures.
He retracts.
He retracts from his first statement, which means the lishma is not significant if you have two witnesses. Yeah. If you validate with and you would need also two messengers. Otherwise, we have a decree that the lishma is a problem. It's
How do
only
you
together.
know whether or not it is done with lishma or not?
Well, we're assuming that it's always done lishma, except
And
we
you
had a
know it
concern
isn't.
that maybe it wasn't. That, or maybe if we're not going to be concerned now that it was lishma, maybe later on we should be concerned, and if we don't take care of that concern now, later on we're not going to take care of it either. We're afraid that, in other words, there was a time when they weren't doing it lishma. Then they started to do it lishma. We have a concern that they may go back to their old ways. So even now, when it is good, we still say that we should be strict on them so that it never goes back. We should always attest to them. Okay. Nichtav bayayim v'nechtam bayayim. We have a new Mishnah. The get was written by day and it was signed by day. That sounds like a valid get. Balayla v'nechtam balayla. It was written by night and signed by night. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Balayla v'nechtam bayayim. It was written at night and signed by day. Okay, now this is getting complicated. It was written at night and signed by day. I guess
That's the same day.
that is the same day. So the rule is it's kosher because in Jewish calendar, the night is the beginning of the day. Well, let's say it's the other way. Let's say it was bayayim v'nechtam balayla. Let's say it was written by day and signed by night. It was a long get. It's puzzle. It's invalid. Why? Because it's a predated get. Because the actual validity of the get is only at the signatures, really at the delivery, but it's at the signatures, and the date in it was at the time when they were writing it, so it's predated, and predated get is puzzle. Reb Shimon says a predated get could be kosher. If it would have been a different type of document, if it would have been a sale or a gift of some sort, then it would be invalid. Yeah. Or a loan, all of these would be invalid if the date is wrong. The date is very important. The date is important in those documents because it affects mortgages and purchases. Because if you predate a sale, then when the person lent the fellow money, relying on property that he had, turned out that in the document of the sale, it was sold before, so then the person can't collect it. you're affecting. And now if you do it the other way, if you predate a loan to before the sale, then some purchaser that purchased this property thinking that the person that he purchased it from has no mortgages. Now that mortgage, that loan was predated. And now it goes back, and now he loses the property that he bought after his title search. He already saw that there was nothing there, but now because they predated it, now it messed him up. He's gonna end up losing a property. So in these documents, it's a problem. But in a divorce document, Reb Shimon says there's nothing to worry about. Right. Itmar, it was stated, why in general do you need a date in a divorce? She's divorced. What's the problem? She has the document or whatever, so good. She doesn't. What does it affect when the divorce took place? Rabbi Yochanan says it does affect, because it could be that this fellow married his niece, and his niece commits adultery. And normally, if it would be his wife, he would say, "Okay, kill her." But this is not only is it his wife, but it's also his niece. So even though he's upset with her for what she did, but he still has concern for her because she's his relative. So he wants to cover over her sin. What he's going to do is he's going to say, she was divorced already, but she wasn't divorced. So what he does is he would give her a document that says that she was divorced before she committed adultery. So, or she could just give her a document without a date on it, and then she would claim, I've been divorced before. It wasn't adultery. Rish Lakish says we're concerned misham peiros. We're concerned that from the writing of the get, the husband doesn't have rights to her property. So what she's going to do is she's going to go to court. She's going to say that my husband's been selling my produce since, and we've been divorced already for a long time. So I want all the money back. Meanwhile, they didn't get divorced yet. They only got divorced now. She just got the document, but it had a predated the date on it. So she's going to claim from him extra money, even though he had rights to that produce up till the divorce. So Reish Lakish has a monetary concern, and Rabbi Yochanan has a ritual law concern, an adultery concern. It will cover over the Reish Lakish. My time come Rabbi Yochanan. Why does Reish Lakish isn't concerned about Rabbi Yochanan's concern, which was about covering up for the adultery of his niece, that's his wife, Al-Malach? Adultery is not so common. It's not something that we're going to institute a date just because of that case. Could have said marrying your niece is not so common, but that wasn't the issue. This could happen in other cases. That was just this possible example. Rabbi Yochanan, my time Rish Lakish. Why does Rabbi Yochanan not say like Rish Lakish? Why doesn't he say that it's a monetary concern? Because Rabbi Yochanan says that she can't claim with the get anyway that the husband was selling her property when he wasn't allowed to, because the date in the document doesn't tell me anything. It's only what really tells me is that when the document was given, because the divorce date, the date in the document doesn't stop him from eating the produce that she has. So therefore, since he still has the rights to that produce, so it doesn't matter what the date is in there. The date in there doesn't affect his rights. Okay, Bishlam of Reish Lakish, according to Reish Lakish, who says that it has to do with the monetary concern. We can understand what Reb Shimon's opinion was. Reb Shimon holds that why is a get that's predated kosher? Because we'll say that predated doesn't affect the rights of the husband. So it really, what's the reason why I put a document? Why I put a date in the document is in order so that she doesn't make any claims against him with the money. But the truth is that she can't make any claims anyway. So How is he going to explain why I have a get? Why I have, according to Reb Shimon, why do I need a date? B'chlal?
How would they keep track of the dates that the gets were delivered? Sign. Brings forms. Question. It's actually the noun.
No, I'm saying it's wrong. I'm saying it's wrong. What Reb Shimon holds is the opposite. Reb Shimon holds exactly the opposite. Shimon holds that once you write the date in the document, the husband loses. Once you write the document, the husband loses his rights.
The writing and the dating of
The dating of the
Yeah,
document,
wow,
so
so
which
it's
means, so that's why a document is supposed to be dated,
important.
according to Reb Shimon, according to everyone. But why is it kosher if it's predated?
Was it kosher?
Really, it's not kosher if it's predated. It's only kosher if it was written by day and signed by night, according to Reb Shimon. Because when you write the document, and you're supposed to write the date of the day that it's written, that's when the husband loses the fruits. And if you're going to claim that, 1 second, but she's going to go and say that the husband was selling fruits on a Friday, let's do a Thursday, on a Thursday.
Right.
And really the get was only signed on a Friday, the
Nice.
day later. It was signed Thursday night. And she's going to take away the husband's, which the husband actually has rights to because of a date in a document. But that's not really what she has rights to. She only has rights to that from the date of from the time of the signing, which was the day later. So Reb Shimon says, don't worry about that because I hold that she has the rights from the writing of the document. So she has actually, but her claim would actually be correct. No, Reb Shimon holds that it's kosher if it's the next day. Yeah, that's what we're explaining it. Explaining how could Reb Shimon say that it's kosher when it's a day later? Reb Shimon says that all documents that are signed a day later are invalid except for a get.
Oh.
Get is kosher. The get is kosher. So why is the get kosher? Could be that she's going to make a claim that's not correct. The answer is that her claim is correct. Okay.
But it can only be 1 day later. It can't be like a week later. It can't be a big break in.
It can't be.
You write it and they, we're not going to sign it till next week.
I'm not sure. All we're saying from Reb Shimon is that the writing of the get needs to be dated on the day that it's written. It can't be
Write
predated.
it is okay. That's a
It
good word.
can't be predated. It means you
Ah.
can't make up another date in the get. That would be invalid. But the actual writing of the get actually has a halachic, monetary halachic ramification. Is that at that point the husband loses his rights. So we have no concern that the wife is going to do something illegal here because what she's doing is perfectly legal. She's going to make a claim against him that he has no rights to her property, which is true. He does not have rights from the writing of the get.
But there's nowhere on the document where the date of the writing appears. It only appears with the second signature.
No,
Both?
no. The date appears at the writing of the document.
Top of the
At the top of the document.
And they could sign it a week later. or a
Yeah. If
month
they would
later,
sign, according to him, they could sign it later.
and
a day later.
That date doesn't appear anywhere. On
Right.
The oh.
Yeah.
The writing or the delivery.
No, according to Reb Shimon,
I know.
it counts from the writing. She's not divorced, but once you write the get, once husband writes the get, that little bit of saying that I'm not interested in you is enough that she doesn't, her property that she brought into the marriage, the husband loses the rights to that when he writes the get.
That's a money thing.
Yeah. Even though they're still married.
Yeah, but that conflicts because if they're still married,
Yeah, but there's two parts to this. They're still married regarding the marriage laws, but regarding the rights to her property, he loses when he writes the get.
what if he decides not to deliver it? Or is
Oh,
it
then
on-
I guess
written first.
it's going to be retroactive. Yeah, if they're going to stay married, that's an interesting question. I guess after the divorce, you would probably go back and say this, that it's from the time of the writing. Okay,
You might have to take back some of this stuff that he's
right.
assuming during that time.
El Rabbi Yochanan, my time with the Reb Shimon the Machshir, but according to Rabbi Yochanan, that says that there's a concern of that he's going to cover up on his niece that committed adultery. How could anyone say that this is valid? This is a real sin. This is a big problem. Rabbi Yochanan says, "Aliba the Reb Shimon like Kamina." I wasn't telling you the reason what Reb Shimon holds for the writing of a date and a get. I was telling you the reason for the Rabbanan. Ki Kamina Aliba the Rabbanan. Reb Shimon. You know what the reason Reb Shimon says the date and the get is for? He says that it's for fruits, for the husband's rights, like the other reason. I was explaining the reason of the Rabbanan, why the Rabbanan say that it's invalid. Okay. According to Rabbi Yochanan, according to Rabbi Yochanan, we understand there's an amazing difference between Reb Shimon and the Rabbanan, and that is why in general do I have to write a date in a get? According to Reb Shimon, it's for the fruits, and according to Rabbanan, it's so he doesn't cover up on his niece that committed adultery. And now we understand why, according to Reb Shimon, it's going to be valid if it was signed at night. And according to the Rabbanan, it's going to be invalid. Maybe she committed adultery by day, and he wrote the get by day, and it was only signed by night, so she's really on divorce by night. But he says, don't worry about it because he's going to cover up because of it was written by day. He can cover up on that, make believe she was divorced by day.
That would only be valid according to Reb Shimon. If you read it by day and send it
That's
at night.
exactly why the Rabbanan say it's invalid. We're going behind the law. Why? What's the reason why the rabbi said it's invalid? Because of that concern. Reb Shimon wasn't concerned about adultery; he's only concerned about the fruits. So that's why Reb Shimon says that it is valid, because he loses the rights to the fruits from the writing of it anyway. Okay. I know it could be Reb Shimon. El Reish Lakish, my it could be Reb Shimon the Rabbanan, but according to Reish Lakish, how does he explain the earlier machlekes between Reb Shimon? Reb Shimon is Reb Shimon by Yechai, and the Rabbanan says period the mishas ksiv vad shas ksiv mekabenayo. We have a machlekes between Reb Shimon and the Rabbanan. Very easy machlekes. When does the husband lose his rights to the wife's properties? According to Reb Shimon, at the time of the writing. According to the Rabbanan, at the time of the signing. Very easy explanation. Only problem is, but we learned exactly the opposite. The Itmar, we have a statement, when are you allowed to? When do you take the produce away from the husband? Rabbi Yochanan Mishas Ksiva. Rabbi Yochanan says at the time of the writing.
Right.
Who holds that? Rabbi Shimon, according to everyone. Rish Lakish Amar Mishas Nesina. Rish Lakish says at the time of the giving. Who holds that according to Rish Lakish? It would be the Rabbanan. So the problem over here is, well, really, we had Mishas Chasima. That's what we were learning the whole time, the time of the signing of it. What's the problem? The problem is that really, we would assume that Rabbi Yochanan would hold like the Rabbanan, his Rabbanan. What do his Rabbanan hold? That the fruits would be from the time of,
Right.
in the time of the giving of the get.
Oh.
He didn't actually mention this. Whatever the case is, 1 second, let me just mute this 1 second. Whatever the case is, it's coming out that Rabbi Yochanan, we would think, would say that it's from the time of the signing of the get. That would be the time when the husband would lose the rights. Or who gives it to her, or the signing. Yeah, but the confusion over here is you have two generations of arguments. You have an argument between Reb Shimon and the Rabbanan, and then you have an argument between Reb Yochanan and Reish Lakish, what the argument in between Reb Shimon and the Rabbanan are. And we explained that the argument between Reb Shimon and Rabbanan, according to Reish Lakish, is when the husband loses the rights. Where the Rabbanan say that the husband loses the rights at the time of the signing of the document, not the time of the writing. Then we ask, when does the husband lose the rights? It comes along Reish Lakish, says the husband loses the rights at the writing of the document, which means that he would be passing like Reb Shimon. And we know that the halach would be like the Rabbanan, not like Reb Shimon. So it comes out it's the opposite of the way that it's being explained. The Gemara says Eipach. Switch those opinions around, which would mean that Reish Lakish is the one that says at the time of the writing, and it was Rabbi Yochanan that said at the time of the giving.
Why do we switch it and discussing the opposite all the time?
Let me see, Gemara. Reish Lakish, that is Reish Lakish, who holds the rights to the produce revert to the woman at the time of the writing. And there's Rabbi Yochanan who holds that it's the time of the giving. So which means that we're now accepting Reish Lakish's view according to Reb Shimon. Yeah, they have a note on the side that says that even after we reverse the opinions, I guess what the Gemara is saying is that we never saw anywhere. No, it's not true because Rabbi Yochanan did tell us. I'm not sure what the Gemara's question is. What's coming out is that Reish Lakish is going to be saying the statement according to Reb Shimon. That's what's going to come out. Okay. Should we leave it here? Should we go further? Go further? Let's go further. I'm leaving something unexplained. What the Gemara's question is. Amalei Abayla Rav Yosef. Abai says to Rav Yosef. Abai is a student of Rav Yosef. He says, Gimel Gittin Psula. There's 3 documents, 3 Gittin that are invalid rabbinically, divorce documents. Bimnissus, however, if those documents are used, Havlad Kasher. If you use that get, and she gets remarried, and she has a child, even though the get was invalid, we still say the child is an acceptable child. He's not considered a mamzer. It wasn't considered adultery yet. Well, one of those gittin, which the Gemara is not elaborating on, was that it was written properly with signatures, but there was no date in the get. You say that it's kosher. Abaya says to Rabbi Yosef, if a get is kosher without the signature, without the date, Abaya's claim to Rabbi Yosef is that if bidi eved, you can get away with it, then what kind of institution of the sages is this? If people want to cover up, they'll say, well, it was kosher bidi eved. Anything that you could do that would be acceptable after the fact, in dire circumstances, people would do that. And so that's exactly what we're concerned about. The Gemara answers, Rabbi Yosef answers, well, she can't originally get married with that document.
Right.
We're just saying that if she does, so fine. So there was the sages, no one's going to do the wedding. But if she's married, yes, you're right. It's going to be acceptable. The Gemara says, but Abaya says to Rabbi Yosef, Gaziel is mandi devi my. But aren't you concerned that maybe he'll cut off the top of the document that has the date on it, and then he'll just use that document, and you say that it's valid? In other words, he'll get married with the document with the date, and cut it in. Well, she'll get married. Whenever she needs to cover up over the her adultery, she'll just cut off the top of the document. We're not concerned about such liars. Okay. Let's say he doesn't have the day of the date, but he does tell you which Shemitah it was in, which year it was in, which month it was in, or which week it was in, but he doesn't tell you the day of the week or the day of the month. Amalei, it's kosher. Rabbi Yosef says it's kosher. He says, so then, but the woman can always cover up, or she can always landed already, Rabbi Moshe? I can't hear.
No, this is my first flight. I have other flights,
Oh,
but all good. Baruch
okay.
Hashem.
So the Rabbi Yosef answers, "Ahani l'shvua, the kamil l'shvua, the basrei." Okay, you're right. It doesn't tell me in this week what it is, but it does tell me. It does tell me that it wasn't earlier than this week. It does tell me that it wasn't earlier than this Shemitah, right? Because if you're not going to accept that we're not going to be 100% precise,
Right.
then do you know if it was in the morning or if it was in the evening? On the day itself? You don't know that. Maybe she committed adultery in the morning. He gives her a get in the evening, and she covers up. She says, "I was divorced already," because you don't put the time in the document. So obviously, you're not getting it 100% precise. If that's the case, then it's only going to help for whatever it helps, which would also be good if it says the month of the year. It's also good. Okay, let's leave it right here.
So is it valid for 7 years?
Yeah.
Can you do that?
Okay, thank you. Have a good Shabbos. Oops.
Good time. We're exactly on the bottom of Yud Zayin Amud Beis.
Okay,
line.
thank you. Thanks.
Okay.